Most women today who struggle with men aren't struggling with men at all. They're struggling with their father wound. And most men who cannot commit, can't open or sabotage intimacy aren't struggling with women. They're struggling with the mother wound. I want to begin today with something that looks simple, but in truth, it follows every man and woman into adulthood. Like a shadow, it shapes who we choose in love, how we react, how we trust, and how we suffer. Most people never look at it until life forces them, usually through heartbreak, divorce, loneliness, or deep dissatisfaction or resentment. And it's this question, what do I truly feel towards my mother and father? Now what I should feel, not what Instagram says I should feel, not what your culture says it's appropriate, what you actually feel. And I'll tell you right away, if you stay with me until the end of this video, I will give you one single sentence. You can say to your mother or father, even if they are no longer alive, that will completely shift the energy inside your heart. It will open your feminine side if you're a woman, and your emotional strength if you're a man. I don't want you to miss that. So stay until the end. But for now, just sit with me, take a breath, and let's enter something deep together. Because a lot of your life today, your patterns with men, your ability to be soft, your ability to receive, your money, your confidence, your self-worth, all of that traces back to what happened inside your childhood home. Not the events, but the emotional meanings you've created around those events. Let me begin with the father, because this is where so many women unknowingly lose their feminine energy. When I ask women in coaching and therapy years ago, tell me about your father, the answers almost arrive in the same tone. It's the tone you can smell even in silence. It smells like disappointment. It smells like sorrow that's already dried up. It smells like a wound that healed with a scar, but the skin underneath is still tender. Women tell me, he wasn't there. He never protected us. I couldn't count on him. He was cold. He didn't lead. He chose alcohol. He chose work. He chose another woman. And then comes the sentence that is never said, but always felt. I don't respect him. But here's what people don't realize. When you do not respect your father, your subconscious mind also whispers, men disappoint, men fail, men weak. You're judging masculine itself. And here's even deeper truth. The moment you put your father below you, the moment you feel superior, even if you're right, even if he was truly weak, your own feminine energy shifts. You stop being a daughter and you become the judge. You become the mother. You become the moral authority. You become the one who sees everything and approves nothing. And this position, although it feels powerful, cuts you from softness. A woman in the role of a judge cannot be vulnerable. She cannot truly trust a man. She cannot rest. She cannot receive. She always feels she must stay above to protect herself. Now let's turn to mothers. This is even more sensitive because our culture says the mother is holy. She is the sacred figure. And yes, she is sacred, but she is also human. And the child inside you, she remembers everything. Most people consciously resent their father, but the deeper resentment is towards the mother. Because the child inside you knows one simple truth. It was your mother who chose your father. And even if you never say it out loud, your soul has asked questions like, why did you choose a man like him? Why didn't you protect us? Why didn't you leave? Why didn't you choose better? Why didn't you think of me? This is not disrespect. This is the pain speaking. And when this pain is not resolved, you begin judging your mother, not consciously, but emotionally. You judge her choices, her fears, her weaknesses, her silence, her coping, her mistakes. And here's the interesting thing about judgment. When a woman sits in the judgment of her mother, she automatically judges herself as a woman, because she is, after all, the continuation of her mother. And when a man judges his mother, he judges all women. This is how the family wound becomes relationship wound. But people often avoid this conversation. Do you know why? Because it's painful to admit that people who gave you life also gave you wounds. But this is the part of the journey. Not in a blaming way, not in a dramatic way, but in a truthful, mature, spiritual way. Let me bring something deeper. In the spiritual Vedic philosophy, it says that the soul chooses the mother. And though the mother's choice, the father appears, which means your parents were not random. There were no cosmic accident. There was no oops, wrong family. You came into a story your soul was ready to master. Now let me tell you a humor story, because sometimes humor is a medicine. I once had a client who said, "I'm absolutely sure my soul picked the wrong family. There must be a glitch in the system. Maybe the angel on the duty spilled the coffee and accidentally clicked the wrong home address." And she was so serious. I started laughing and I told her, if angels spilled coffee every time someone complained about their parents, heaven would look like Starbucks. She burst out laughing and then she cried, because beneath the humor was the truth. She didn't want to accept that her childhood was exactly what shaped her strength, her intuition, her compassion, and even the spiritual path now she walks on. Now let me take you even deeper. I want to tell you a real story about a woman who was a drug addict. She had 3 children, and she loved them profoundly. But her love was the love of a wounded soul, not the love of a stable, loving, and nurturing mother. One day she disappeared. She left them, all 3. She walked out of the house and never came back. When I first heard the story, my whole chest tightened. Like, how? How do you leave your babies? What kind of mother does that? Years later, one of her daughters grew up and asked her mother, "Why did you leave us?" And the mother said something that reveals the tragic truth of wounded soul. And she said, "I left because I loved you. I didn't want you to grow up with someone like me." This woman loved her children the only way she knew how, through disappearance, because she believed her presence would destroy them more than her absence. That is how deep human pain can go. This is how distorted love can become when a soul is drowning. Now think about this. Her children could grow up saying, "She abandoned us, she didn't love us," or they could grow up understanding that she was a broken woman who didn't know how to stay. Do you see the difference? One path is resentment, one path is compassion. And compassion is what sets the soul free. Now stay with me, don't leave. What I'm about to tell you next opens the door to healing. This is where everything begins to shift. Now I want you to notice what happens inside your body when you hear stories like that woman who left her children. Some people feel anger, some feel compassion, some feel confusion, and some feel a strange mixture of all 3. And here's why this matters. Whatever you feel towards that mother, That is often what you feel towards your own mother. Somewhere deep inside your nervous system, even if your mother never left, even if she stayed physically, you may still feel you weren't fully there. Something in you was absent, something was missing. And your inner child has never said these words. She has held them silently for years. So let's go even deeper now. When we are children, we look at our parents through instinct, not intellect. Instinct doesn't analyze. Instinct absorbs. It takes whatever emotional climate exists in the home and internalizes it as if it's truth. If the father is weak, the girl learns men are unreliable. If the father is harsh, the boy learns masculinity is dangerous. If the mother is anxious, the child learns life is unsafe. If the mother is overwhelmed, the child feels responsible for emotional state. None of this happens consciously. It happens silently, like an emotional tattoo that the soul tries to hide but ends up carrying everywhere. Let me tell you something that might shock you even more. Most women today who struggle with men aren't struggling with men at all. They're struggling with their father wound. And most men who cannot commit, can't open or sabotage intimacy aren't struggling with women. They're struggling with the mother wound. Now here's where it gets even more interesting. If you resent your father, you often attract a man who forces you to re-experience the same emotional pain, hoping that this time you will react differently and finally heal. Or the opposite. You attract the exact opposite of your father, hoping to reconnect the story, but the energy underneath is the same. I don't trust men. If you resent your mother, you often become a woman who unconsciously repeats her patterns or fights so hard not to be like her that you become the opposite of her. Instead of soft, you become controlling. Instead of feminine, you become hyper independent. Instead of receptive, you become anxious because instead of choosing your path from freedom, you're choosing it as a reaction to her. It's the same story, just painted with different colors. Now stay with me, because this next part will explain why resentment is so destructive to your happiness. When you resent your parents, your heart closes, not because you want it to, but because resentment is like an emotional cement. It freezes a part of you in childhood. The heart becomes divided. One part loves, one part fears. One part judges, one part protects. One part longs for connection, and one part says connection is dangerous. So imagine trying to build a relationship with a heart that is fragmented like that. Imagine trying to trust a man with a heart that learned trust is unsafe. Imagine trying to rest when your nervous system learned rest equals danger. This is why people say, I love him, but I can't let go. Or I want a healthy relationship, but I keep choosing the wrong man. Or I want to feel feminine, but something in me stays tight. This something is resentment. Resentment is not anger. Resentment is frozen love. And frozen love becomes fear. Fear becomes control. Control becomes masculine energy in women. And masculine energy becomes exhaustion, loneliness, disappointment, and emotional burnout. Now, let me tell you something that changed my life many years ago. The heart cannot love selectively. You cannot say, I am close to my father, but open to my partner. You cannot say, I judge my mother, but I embrace my femininity. You cannot say that. I reject where I came from, but I want to build something new. The heart doesn't have separate compartments. If you're closed, you're closed. If you judge, you judge. If you resent, you resent. It doesn't matter who your target is. The energy is the same. This is why many women come to me and say, I do feminine practices, but something in me still feels blocked. And when we go deeper, that something is always tied to a parent. Always. Let me share another story that illustrates this perfectly. I once coached a woman who was incredibly successful on the outside. Beautiful home, beautiful children, loving husband, great career, but inside she felt empty and ashamed of her own unhappiness. She said, Alisa, I have everything a woman should want, but why am I miserable? We dug into her childhood. Her father was loving but weak. Her mother was strong but emotionally cold. And she spent her whole life trying to prove to her mother, I am good, I am worthy, I am enough. But no matter how much she achieved, that emotional hunger remained. Because this hunger wasn't for success, it was for maternal approval. Her entire adult life was an addition for her mother's love. She didn't know this, but her body knew. Her heart knew. Her nervous system knew. And she couldn't relax in her marriage because part of her still felt like a little girl trying to earn love that should have been given freely. Once she understood that, everything shifted. There's one sentence that can transform your entire relationship with your parents. And because of that, transform your entire relationship with love. It's not, I forgive you. It's not, you were right. It's not, I am healed. It's this one. I am sorry. I judged you without knowing your story.